It was a regular Wednesday afternoon at City Tech, a bustling electronics store in the heart of the city. The bright lights reflected off rows of neatly arranged gadgets, making the place look almost futuristic. Customers moved from shelf to shelf, chatting, browsing, and making inquiries. Behind the counter stood Malik, a young, well-dressed black man in his early 20s. Malik had been working at City Tech for nearly 5 years, known among his coworkers for his patience, his calm demeanor, and his gentle smile. To most, he was just another friendly face behind the counter, but what they didn't know was that his connection to the store went far beyond that of an ordinary employee. The store was unusually busy that day, with a steady stream of customers asking about everything from smartphones to the latest tech accessories. Malik moved with precision and ease, helping customers, answering questions, handling complaints. He had mastered the art of keeping his composure, no matter how difficult a situation got. But today was about to test him in a way he hadn't expected. The glass door swung open with a sudden clang, and in walked a tall, middle-aged white man named Thomas. His eyes swept the store with an expression of disdain, his lips curling as if everything before him fell beneath his standards. Thomas was a man who carried bitterness wherever he went, an arrogance carved deeply into the lines of his face. Life had not been kind to him recently. A failed business venture, soured investments, and a lost job had left him with a fractured ego and a deep well of resentment. His sense of entitlement, however, had not faded. In fact, it had grown sharper. Thomas's eyes landed on Malik at the counter, and his expression hardened immediately. He walked over, his footsteps heavy, approaching with a swagger that signaled trouble even before he opened his mouth. "Hey, you!" Thomas shouted, not even trying to mask the sharpness in his voice. He slammed his hand on the counter, the sound echoing across the busy store. "I need some help here." Malik, who had been assisting another customer, looked up, nodded politely, and said in his usual calm tone, "I'll be with you in just a moment, sir." Thomas's scowl deepened, his eyes narrowing at Malik. "No," he snapped, "you'll help me now. I don't have time to wait around for you to get your act together." The customer Malik had been helping quickly stepped aside, sensing the growing tension. Malik approached Thomas, a calm smile still on his face, accustomed to handling irate customers. "How can I assist you today, sir?" he asked. Thomas rolled his eyes, shoving a box across the counter with unnecessary force. "I bought this laptop a week ago, and it's not working. You people sell cheap garbage here. I want a refund." Malik examined the box, then began pulling up the purchase details in the store system. "Let me take a look for you," he said, his voice steady. But before he could begin, Thomas let out a loud, mocking laugh, drawing glances from nearby customers. "Of course, I get the slow one," Thomas muttered, loudly enough for everyone to hear, his eyes flicking around to see if anyone was joining in on his so-called joke. "Figures?" Malik ignored the insult, focusing instead on checking the laptop's details and running a few tests. He glanced up and said, "It seems like it might just be a software issue, sir. We could update the system for you, and it should work fine. There's no need for a refund." Thomas's face turned crimson, his frustration boiling over. "I don't need some store clerk explaining things to me," he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "Just give me my money back, or get someone who knows what they're doing. You shouldn't even be working here if you can't handle a simple return." Malik felt the sting of the words, but he remained composed. He had heard worse after all. "I assure you, sir," Malik began, "I'm more than capable of handling this issue. I can help fix the laptop for you. Or, if you'd still prefer a refund, I just need to follow store policy." Thomas crossed his arms, his posture aggressive, leaning closer to Malik. "I don't know how you got this job," he sneered. "I guess places like this have to hire people like you to meet some quota. Huh? The words hung in the air, a deliberate and ugly attempt to cut deep. The insult was loud enough for others to hear, and a few customers glanced over, their expressions betraying shock and discomfort. Malik felt the familiar tightness in his chest, that feeling of being reduced to nothing by a few hateful words. But he had learned long ago not to take the bait. He would not allow himself to react, not in the way Thomas wanted. "I'm just here to do my job and help you, sir," Malik said quietly, his voice even. "Now, if you'd like a refund, I can process it for you once I check a few more details." Thomas shook his head, feigning disbelief, his eyes gleaming with malice. "Unbelievable," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. "You probably don't even understand half of what I'm saying. I bet someone else has to do all the thinking for you." Before Malik could respond, a young woman, another store employee named Jasmine, walked up. She had overheard the conversation from the back and could see the confrontation escalating. "Everything okay here, Malik?" she asked, her eyes shifting between Thomas and Malik. Malik offered a small smile, appreciating the support. "Yes, Jasmine," he replied. "I'm handling it." Thomas smirked, thinking he had gotten under Malik's skin. "Yeah, get some backup," he taunted. "Maybe she can do the job you clearly can't." Jasmine looked ready to say something, but Malik shook his head gently, signaling that he had it under control. He turned back to Thomas. "If you're not satisfied with my assistance, I can call the manager for you," he offered. Thomas grinned, a wicked satisfaction playing on his face. "Finally, something useful," he said. "Yeah, go get the manager. Maybe they'll know how to handle a customer properly." Malik nodded and stepped away from the counter. Thomas watched him go, his smirk widening, the look of triumph on his face unmistakable. He leaned against the counter, muttering under his breath about incompetent staff and how places like this go downhill when they hire the wrong kind of people. A few minutes later, Malik returned, but there was no one with him. Thomas's smirk faltered. "Where's the manager?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Malik took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Thomas's. "I am the manager," he said, his voice steady but firm. Thomas blinked, clearly taken aback. You're the manager?" He laughed, but the sound was hollow, forced. "Yeah, right. Don't try to pull that on me. Where's the real manager? You can't be the one in charge." "I assure you, sir," Malik said, standing a little taller, "I am not only the manager, but I am also the owner of this store." The color drained from Thomas's face, as if someone had thrown cold water over him. For a moment, he was speechless, his arrogant demeanor crumbling. The owners?" Thomas stammered, his mind racing to make sense of the situation. How could this young black man, someone he had treated with such disdain, be the owner of such a successful store? "Yes," Malik replied calmly, his gaze unwavering. "I started this business a few years ago. City Tech is my company. Now, would you like to continue discussing your return, or is there something else you need?" Thomas swallowed hard, the weight of his earlier words crashing down on him. This was not just an employee he could bully and disrespect. This was the owner, the person with the power to decide how this entire situation would play out. I didn't realize," Thomas began, but Malik cut him off. "You didn't realize what?" Malik asked, his voice steady. "That I'm the owner, or that treating people with respect is important, no matter who they are?" Thomas hesitated, his arrogance now replaced with uncertainty. I didn't mean what I said," he fumbled. "I was just frustrated with the laptop, and I wasn't thinking straight." Malik let the silence stretch for a moment, forcing Thomas to sit with the weight of his actions. Thomas, desperate to salvage the situation, shifted tactics. "Listen, I'm sorry," he said, his voice almost pleading. "I shouldn't have said those things. I've been going through a lot lately. I lost my job recently, and things have been hard. I took it out on you, and that wasn't right. Malik raised an eyebrow. So you think your difficult circumstances give you an excuse to insult and demean others? No, no, that's not what I meant, Thomas stammered. I'm just saying, I've been under a lot of pressure. I'm really sorry. Please don't take it personally. Malik studied him for a moment, then exhaled slowly. Apologies don't undo the damage, Thomas, he said. But I'll give you credit for owning up to it. Now, do you still need help with the laptop, or is there something else on your mind? Thomas hesitated, his hands twisting nervously. He had come into the store expecting to leave with a refund and a sense of superiority. But now, things had changed completely. The power dynamic had shifted, and he found himself in a position he never could have imagined. Actually, Thomas said, his voice small, there is something else. He paused, clearly embarrassed. I heard that City Tech is hiring. Like I said, I lost my job recently, and I've been struggling to find something else. I thought maybe you might have an opening. The irony of the situation was not lost on either of them. Here is Thomas, the man who had just humiliated Malik, now asking for a job. Malik considered this for a long moment, his eyes never leaving Thomas's face. I see, Malik finally said. And why do you think you'd be a good fit for a job here? Thomas's face flushed redder. I've got experience in sales, he stammered. And I know a lot about electronics. I could be a good asset to your team if you give me a chance. Malik nodded slowly. I'll tell you what, Thomas. You can fill out an application, just like everyone else. I'll review it, and we'll see if you're a good fit. Thomas's relief was palpable. Thank you, he said, his voice almost a whisper. I really appreciate that. I won't let you down. Malik gave a small nod, his expression neutral. We'll see. As Thomas filled out the application, the weight of his earlier actions pressed down on him. He had walked in, ready to bully his way to a refund, but now he was leaving with a hope, however small, of a job. When he handed the form back to Malik, he couldn't meet his eyes. Again, I'm really sorry for how I acted, Thomas muttered. Malik took the form without a word. I'll be in touch, he said simply. Thomas left the store, his steps heavy, his mind spinning. He had learned a hard lesson that day, one he wouldn't forget anytime soon. As Malik watched him go, he reflected on the encounter. Life had a way of turning the tables in unexpected ways. Today had been a reminder of the power of patience and integrity. And for Thomas, it had been a lesson in humility, a lesson he desperately needed.